Hello, welcome back to The Dirty Truth. I'm Benjamin Harris, and we're going to continue with As Worldviews Collide, video number 3, The Origin of Life. And this is in a series of videos debunking the God delusion by Richard Dawkins. So let's jump right in. The origin of life. To move from where matter originated from to where did life originate from, according to Christian biblical scripture, is easy because it's explained in the days of creation. However, to do this according to science is where we enter a realm of the supernatural, because to have life you must have matter, and science cannot explain where matter originates from. To give Richard a fair shot at the origin of life by only naturalistic means, I will grant him that matter somehow exists, and we will see if the delusion continues. But remember, in order to have a real argument for evolution, you must first explain where all the matter of the universe came from. The biblical account of the origin of life. We're going to be in Genesis 1, verses 20 through 31. Like we talked about in the last video, life actually started, or plant life started on day 3. But this is for animal and human life. So chapter 1, verse 20 through 31. And God said, Let the waters bring forth abundantly the moving creatures that hath life, and fowl that may fly above the earth in the open firmament of heaven. And God created great whales and every living creature that moveth, which the waters brought forth abundantly after their kind, and every winged fowl after his kind. And God saw that it was good. And God blessed them, saying, Be fruitful and multiply, and fill the waters in the sea, and let the fowl multiply in the earth. And the evening and the morning were the 5th day. And God said, Let the earth bring forth the living creatures after his kind, cattle and creeping things, and beasts of the earth after his kind. And it was so. And God made the beasts of the earth after his kind, and cattle after their kind, and everything that creepeth upon the earth after his kind. And God saw that it was good. And God said, Let us make man in our image, after our likeness, and let them have dominion over the fish of the sea, and over the fowl of the air, and over the cattle, and over all the earth, and over every creeping thing that creepeth upon the earth. So God created man in his own image. In the image of God created he him. Male and female created he them. And God blessed them. And God said unto them, Be fruitful and multiply, and replenish the earth, and subdue it, and have dominion over the fish of the sea, and over the fowl of the air, and over every living thing that moveth upon the earth. And God said, Behold, I have given you every herb bearing seed, which is upon the face of all the earth, and every tree in which the fruit of a tree yielding seed, to you it shall be for meat. And to every beast of the earth, and to every fowl of the air, and to everything that creepeth upon the earth, wherein there is life, I have given every green herb for meat. And it was so. And God saw everything that he had made, and behold, it was very good. And the evening and the morning were the 6th day. Thus the heavens and the earth, this is Genesis chapter 2, 1 through 7. Thus the heavens and the earth were finished, and all of the host of them. And on the 7th day God ended his work, and he ended his work which he had made, and he rested on the 7th day from all his work which he had made. And God blessed the 7th day and sanctified it, because that in it he had rested from all his work which God created and made. These are the generations of the heavens and of the earth when they were created, in the day that the Lord made the earth and the heavens, and every plant of the field before it was in the earth, and every herb of the field before it grew. And the Lord God had not caused it to rain upon the earth, and there was not a man to till the ground. But there went up a mist from the earth, and watered the whole face of the ground. And the Lord God formed man of the dust of the ground, and breathed into his nostrils the breath of life, and man became a living soul. So once again, according to the God Dawkins is talking about, Yahweh, the God of creation, the origin of all animal life, including humans, were created on days 5 and 6. This brings 3 more testable scenarios to the table. Number 1, if God said, "Let the waters bring forth abundantly," then we should see life anywhere we find water. Number 2, is there a point where life needs an external force other than itself to start? And number 3, is there evidence that all creatures have a unique traceable ancestral path back to their beginning? So in this video, we're only going to address the second scenario, and in the next video, we'll discuss the first and the third scenarios. So to understand these scenarios, we'll first talk about how science explains the origin of life. The scientific account of the origin of life. Abiogenesis, as defined by Wikipedia, is the natural process by which life has arisen from non-living matter, such as simple organic compounds. The study of abiogenesis aims to determine how pre-life chemical reactions gave rise to life under conditions strikingly different from those on Earth today. It primarily uses tools from biology and chemistry, with more recent approaches attempting a synthesis of many sciences. This means that life should be amazingly simple to create because we have extremely talented biologists and chemists in the workforce today. Dr. James Tour is an American chemist and nanotechnologist that is a professor of chemistry, professor of material science and nanoengineering at Rice University in Houston, Texas, that participated in a Harvard Roundtable event on November 28, 2023. Dr. Lee Cronin, who is the Regis Chair of Chemistry in the School of Chemistry at the University of Glasgow and a top origin of life researcher, also participated in the Roundtable event. Both were invited guest speakers. Dr. Cronin was the only origin of life researcher from a list of the top 10 origin of life research experts to attend. The 9 that declined, and I'm going to butcher some of these names, the 9 that declined were Steve Benner, Jack Zolstek, Clemens Richard, Bruce Lipschitz, John Sutherland, Nichols Hud, Ramanirian, Chris Hamarty, Neil Diversia, and Matthew Powner. Sorry if I butchered your name. Dr. James Tour, Harvard Roundtable speech highlights. This is what he said. So when they did the roundtable, you had Dr. Tour goes up first, and he gives like a 15 or 20-minute speech, followed by Dr. Lee Cronin, who also gives a 15 or 20-minute speech, and then they have dinner. So you got all of these Harvard professors there. They hear the 2 speeches, then they have dinner, and they discuss the topics, and then at the end of it, they put both Dr. Tour and Dr. Cronin on the stage with a couple of the professors, and then they ask questions in a discussion up there. So this is the highlights of Dr. Tour's speech. Dr. Tour agrees that abiogenesis is the origin of life from non-living matter. He says nobody was present at life's origin, so we will never know how life originated. But that's not what we are seeking to answer. What we are seeking is an experimentally verifiable hypothesis as to how life might have originated. Dr. Tour agrees with Dr. Cronin's statement. I'd like to ask you all a question, which is, what is the most basic unit of matter that can undergo Darwinian evolution that you know? And I suppose it won't be much of a surprise to see that it's a cell. So what are the requirements for a living system? We need genetic code, we need mating, we need metabolism, we need adaptation, and we need homeostasis. A naturalist might argue that Christians keep moving the goalposts when it comes to answering these questions, But Dr. Tor debunks the moving goalpost idea because what is actually moving the goalpost is knowledge. What this means is the more we understand how a cell works, the more complex the chemistry becomes to create one. Dr. Tor goes on to explain that chemistry is the language of living systems because we are made up of molecules, not machine parts. Dr. Tor also says this is why we do not build robots out of molecules because we do not know how to make the molecules. For this, Dr. Tor says you need 4 building blocks of life, or the 4 classes of compounds. You need polysaccharides, polypeptides, polynucleotides, and lipids, and you need the monomers that make them up. This is the language of a living system. The problem is molecules do not care about life and have never been shown to move towards life, ever, unless there is a biological entity pushing them along and forcing them to do this. Dr. Tor says there are 5 main questions that must be addressed and answered to solve the origin of life problem, and they are polypeptides, polynucleotides, polysaccharides, specified information, and assembly of a living cell. Once scientists, chemists, and biologists can answer and understand how to do these 5 things from prebiotic conditions, then we will understand how life got started, or at least have a model that explains the origin of life. Dr. Tor goes on to argue that no person has ever explained one of these, let alone all 5, and this is why science is clueless on how life got started. Dr. Tor ended his speech with these predictions, and I quote, "I predict that Professor Cronin, a synthetic chemist, will not discuss anything tonight about the chemical reactions leading to life's origin. I predict that Professor Cronin will remain silent on polypeptides, polynucleotides, and cell assembly, resorting to calling those narrow questions and not worth addressing. Most importantly, will the audience leave tonight understanding anything more about life's origin than what Professor Cronin says, from what Professor Cronin says?" So I would conclude, as one might, from such bold claims, that Dr. Tor would have, at the very least, ruffled some feathers over his claims, because he is saying that origin of life researchers are not only not gaining ground, but are losing ground on their field of research. Dr. Tor simply says, "Show me the chemistry that will do these things," and lucky for us, Dr. Cronin rose to the occasion as the only origin of life researcher of the 10 invited to attend the Harvard Roundtable event. The predicted outcome would be Dr. Cronin would just present his data and say, "This is how we're doing it in the lab, and here's the life that we have created." Because Dr. Cronin, at a TED Talk on September 9th, 2011, said, "What I'm trying to do in the next 15 minutes or so is to tell you about an idea how we're going to make matter come alive." When asked by Chris Anderson, just a quick question on timeline, "You believe you're going to be successful in this project? When?" Dr. Cronin responded, "Hopefully within the next 2 years." So at the time of this roundtable event, it has been a full 12 years since Dr. Cronin said he would create life in a lab. And what better platform than Harvard University to share his data? So this is the highlights from Dr. Cronin's Harvard Roundtable speech. As Dr. Cronin approached the speaking platform, I sat in excitement to hear him explain a method to make the versions of carbohydrate, amino acids, nucleotides, or lipids in a prebiotically relevant manner, or show that the mixtures found in meteorites or interstellar space could be useful for synthesis, or show how he has solved the mass transfer problem in chemical transformation from small molecules to a cell, or show how carbohydrate polymerization is not unfathomable without enzyme direction, or how he solved the polymer stability problem when dealing with single molecules where time is enemy number 1, or show how he has solved the problem with half of the amino acids needing side chain protection, or how he has solved the code problem, aka DNA, for ordering the nucleotides or saccharides or proteins if those came first, or show how life could form with lower excess mixtures, thereby mitigating the need for chiral-induced spin selectivity, or show how the requisite protein folding could have occurred in spite of there being 10 to the 95th possible formations for a chain of 100 residues, because if you were over 10 to the 40th ways, and there isn't enough time in the universe to have randomly caused this. Or explain how the requisite interactome could be prepared, because if one merely considers all protein to protein interactome combinations in just a single yeast cell, the result is an estimated 10 to the 79 billionth chances to get it correct. And there are only an estimated 10 to the 90th number of elemental particles in the universe. Or show how he has made the higher order structures needed for the simplest of cells: DNA replication, a basic transcription machinery, tRNA synthesis, ribosomal proteins, ribosomal function, modification, translation factors, RNA degeneration, protein processing, folding or secretion, cellular division or transport, and intermediary metabolism, or simply show how he can deconstruct the cell and then put it back together again and make it function, because any one of these things would be worthy of a Nobel Prize. I, along with the attending audience and everyone that watched the video or this event on YouTube, watched in dismay as Professor Cronin started talking and fulfilling Dr. Torr's predictions. Professor Cronin, the synthetic chemist, does not dive right into the synthetic chemistry. He chooses to start with our sun, and then makes a false statement about stars, saying we need to understand not the origin of our sun, but how stars form in the universe, and how indeed, if you look up in the sky, if you are lucky enough, you will see them dying and you will see them being born. Well, no one has ever seen a star being formed, which makes it the very opening statement and idea is false. Professor Cronin quickly recovers and transitions from how the sun formed to synthetic chemistry by saying, now let's tackle the problem Jim talked about. Yes, we can solve polypeptide formation. Yes, we can talk about the chemistry, but we need to talk about the constraints. All the while never explaining any chemistry. Never once in the whole speech given by Professor Cronin, the synthetic chemist, did he discuss chemistry at any level to explain any of the problems Dr. Torr has given that origin of life must overcome for life to have started through a purely chemical process. So let's just look at the research data gathered from creating life in a laboratory. Okay, origin of life research data that shows how life began. There's not any, ever. There is none, because life has never, not even a little bit, been created in a lab. This fact is verified by all the aforementioned top 10 origin of life researchers and what they had to say, or rather did not say, at the Harvard Roundtable event in November of 2023. This fact will prove to be troublesome for Richard as he attempts to cling to his belief in Darwinian evolution, because according to scientific data, life thus far has not been proven to have started from the purely chemical reaction to go from non-living material to life, followed by the evolution of life. So let's look at a paradox for the origin of life. Irreducible complexity. This will be fun for the naturalists, because at first they'll think they have won the argument, but then real science steps in and crushes their dreams. So how does Wikipedia explain irreducible complexity? It's the argument that certain biological systems with multiple interacting parts would not function if one of the parts were removed. So supposedly could not have evolved by successive small modifications from earlier, less complex systems through natural selection, which would need all intermediate precursor systems to have been fully functional. This negative argument is then complemented by the claim that only alternative explanation is a purposeful argument of parts, arrangement of parts, inferring design by an intelligent agent. Irreducible complexity has been central to the creationist concept of intelligent design, but the concept of irreducible complexity has been rejected by the scientific community, which regards intelligent design as pseudoscience. Irreducible complexity and specified complexity are the two main arguments used by intelligent design proponents to support their version of the theological argument for design. The central concept of biological complexity, too improbable to have evolved by chance natural processes, was already featured in creation science. In 1989, school textbook of Pandas and People introduced the alternative terminology of intelligent design. In 1993 edition, the 1993 edition was revised to include a variation of the same argument. It was later shown that these revisions were written by Michael Behe, a professor of biochemistry at Lee University. Behe introduced the expression irreducible complexity along with a full account of his arguments in his 1996 book, Darwin's Black Box. And he said it made evolution through natural selection of random mutation impossible or extremely improbable. This was based on the mistaken assumption that evolution relies on improvement of existing functions, ignoring how complex adaptations originate from change in function and disregarding published research. Evolutionary biologists have published rebuttals showing how systems discussed by Behe can evolve, and examples documented through comparative genomics show that complex molecular systems are formed by the addition of components as revealed by different temporal origins of their proteins. In the 2005 Kitzmiller versus Dover area school district trial, Behe gave testimony on the subject of irreducible complexity. The court found that Professor Behe's claim for irreducible complexity has been refuted in peer-reviewed research papers and has been rejected by the scientific community at large. This is the whole point of the book, this is the whole point of the videos as worldviews collide, because here we're looking at evidence viewed through two different worldviews. The naturalistic worldview, which says everything must have a natural causation of evolution through natural selection, versus intelligent design argument that says everything was created by an intelligent creator. The real problem with the naturalistic worldview is that it originated from Darwin, and Darwin didn't have the tools needed at the time to be able to look into a cell. This means his whole assumption of evolution is incorrect. He even admits this. In his own words, he says, if numerous species belonging to the same genre or family have really started into life all at once, the fact would be fatal to the theory of descent with slow modification through natural selection. Bob Davis wrote an article on this in Explore God titled, How Darwin Failed His Own Test. This is what Bob writes. What has the past 150 years shown us about Darwin's theory of evolution? Like any good scientist, Charles Darwin made a prediction by which other scientists could test his theory in the future. In other words, he made Darwinism falsifiable, capable of being proved false. More than a century and a half later, we are in a position to judge whether his theory has indeed been falsified. So this is precursors versus sudden appearance. He goes on to write, Darwin packaged up his book on the origin of species shortly after its publication, and he sent it to the most renowned scientist of the time, Harvard geologist and paleontologist Louis Agassiz. After reading it, Agassiz informed Darwin that the fossil record did not support Darwin's theory that all life began from a common ancestor, and then proceeded through the process of natural selection, generating gradually more complex life forms. Agassiz pointed out that instead, the fossil record was marked by the sudden appearance and disappearance of unrelated and different species. Moreover, many of the most complex life forms appeared very early in the history of existence. In a written response, Darwin acknowledged that if whole groups of species were to have indeed appeared suddenly, his theory would be proved false. Darwin wrote, if numerous species belonging to the same genre or family have really started into life all at once, the fact would be false. The fact would be false to the theory of descent with slow modification through natural selection. The most disturbing fossil evidence against Darwinianism in the middle 19th century was the sudden geological appearance of a whole range of complex sea creatures in the Cambrian formation of Scotland. The Cambrian fossils date back to 530 million years ago and have no apparent predecessors. Only very simple life forms like sponges and unicellular animals. However, Darwin remained confident that with continued fossil collection, paleontologists would find the precursor his theory demanded. So how is this dispute between two great intellects of 19th century science played out to date? The fossil record now. The fossil record has increased by orders of magnitude. In fact, Cambrian animals, with all their rich disparity, have been found all over the world, notably in British Columbia, China, Australia, and Greenland. Yet precursors to the Cambrian animals, outside of single-cell life and simple sponges, remain undiscovered. Two prominent 20th century paleontologists, Niles Eldredge and Stephen Jay Gould, have admitted that stasis, a period of life, a period of little or no evolutionary change, is the dominant characteristic of the fossil record. Gould called it paleontology's trade secret, and an embarrassing one at that. Gould and Eldredge postulated a non-Darwinian but naturalistic process to account for what the fossil record showed. The sudden appearance of new, higher-order life forms needed an explanation. Gould and Eldredge provided one, what they called punctuated equilibrium. Those who hold fast to the notion of very gradual incremental change uses the term punk-ek to ridicule the idea that somehow major changes can occur quickly and not be a form of creationism. One of the richest Cambrian fossil discoveries in the southern Chinese province or one of the richest Cambrian fossil discoveries is in the southern Chinese province of Kunming. Chinese paleontologists seem to be convinced that the gradual incremental changes postulated by Darwin just do not explain the Kunming fossils. This led one Chinese paleontologist to say, in China we can criticize Darwin but not the government. In America you can criticize the government but not Darwin. To be sure, Gould and Eldredge are not creationists, but they are part of a growing number of scientists who, like the Chinese paleontologists, are admitting that Darwin's self-imposed test to his theory simply is not finding empirical support. Part of the reason that materialistic philosophy, which states that only the material natural world is real and therefore everything can be explained in terms of molecules and motion, prevails in spite of the evidence is rooted in one definition of science. That definition allows no inference of non-materialistic causes to be considered. Hence, when evidence from a science points to a creator, it is said to be non-scientific because it falls outside the bounds of the modern definition of science. This circular reasoning stands in contrast to the original inputs for science that follows the evidence wherever it leads. So, failing the test. So how did the neo-Darwinians respond to the apparent failure of Darwin's own test for his theory? Some still have faith that the fossil record will eventually yield support for Darwinianism in spite of the huge and uniform sampling that says otherwise. Others claim that the soft body parts of the predecessors could not be fossilized, and therefore the evidence has not been preserved. This later claim has been laid bare by the discovery of Cambrian era fossilized soft tissue. Darwin put forth a test to his theory, namely that the sudden appearance of most of life's major body plans and phyla in the Cambrian era would in time be shown to be part of a gradual progression of life's increasing complexity. However, the absence of his predicted precursors remains, despite the passage of more than 150 years of intense investigation on all continents. Although not the only flaw in Darwin's theory, it is the one that he himself set forth as a critical test. And so far, his theory has failed the test. Now, it will be further proved in the next video that evolution is impossible because, unlike Darwin, we now have the technology to decode DNA and understand the molecular machinery structures and functions in a cell. Strangely enough, Darwin's test not only disproves evolution, but it gives strong evidence that creation is true. The Cambrian fossils directly reflect creation of all animal life on days 5 and 6, according to Genesis 1, chapter 1, verse 20 through 28. The DNA evidence will also back up this claim, as it will prove there are not common ancestors between species. This also showcases that when worldviews are compared side by side using the same evidence, that one truly is a delusion, and that is the belief that God does not exist. There has been enough scientific evidence shown so far to destroy Richard Dawkins' arguments of naturalism, but he still clings to it, only proving that he is in fact a fundamentalist and that his mind cannot be changed no matter the evidence. Because I'm not the only one that said this to Richard. This is stuff that they debate over all the time. So he knows all of the evidence just like everybody else. So when he says that he's not a fundamentalist and his mind can be changed, that's just a flat lie. So passion for passion, you may be evenly matched with a Christian, but Richard, evidence for evidence, you're not even playing the same game. Let us not forget that I make these claims against not just Richard Dawkins, but anyone who shares his same views, because as Jack Nicholson said in A Few Good Men, you can't handle the truth. So everybody that thinks the way that Richard does, that believes in evolution and all of this other stuff, you're just delusional. It's written down in the Bible. Science backs up what the Bible says, but they throw the Bible out because the definition of science, the way they define science, means that it must be naturalistic. So that automatically excludes the Bible, which is wrong, because everything that's written in the Bible tracks with what science says. So I hope you've enjoyed this video. If you have, please like and subscribe, and stay tuned for video number 4, where we will continue to see Richard Dawkins' delusion as we discuss evolution and DNA. Have a great day. God bless you all, and see you next time.